So that was 10 years in the clinical trial.
What used to take us a year, now we do it in 2 weeks.
It's going to change the landscape. Oh, I'm very optimistic about this.
Why don't we meet our panelists? Let's start with you, Ana Maria. Dr. Ana María Cuervo, distinguished professor, MD, PhD at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, one of the world's leading researchers in biology of aging. Ana Maria, very welcome, and tell us a little about yourself and the work you're doing.
Well, thank you very much for having me here, Adam. So, as Adam mentioned, I'm a professor at Albert Einstein, and don't get confused by the MD part of my title because I just do basic research in mice, but I will try to convince you why basic research is so important. And what we are mostly interested is on the process of biology of aging, what happened, why we age, and what contributes to aging. And in particular, one of the factors or drivers of aging that we are looking at is something that is called autophagy. That is basically how your cells clean themselves every day. So we have go for the molecular characterization and trying to go through genetic models and studies of how to develop some compounds and interventions that by acting on autophagy could modulate the way that we age and some of these age-related diseases that we all care so much.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about autophagy as we move along. Our next panelist, Dr. Jim Bryson, a doctor and a PhD in biochemistry, if I'm correct, a pharmaceutical executive for many, many, many years, experience in biotherapeutics, I believe, in discovery, development, and bringing new therapies through the development process. Jim, welcome. You want to tell us a little bit more about your background?
Yeah, thank you very much, Adam, and thanks for the invitation to be a part of this really interesting discussion. So yes, my expertise is biochemistry. Biochemistry and with a specialty in proteins, protein folding and stability and protein-protein interactions, how proteins recognize each other and how they are recognized by or recognize small molecules, and particularly small molecules which form the majority of our drugs, how drugs interact with proteins in order to change their activity, modulate the activity to a beneficial physiological effect. Most of my experience is with Bristol Myers Squibb in the discovery phase of bringing new pharmaceuticals to patients. My own experience and expertise kind of ends with the initial first-in-human clinical trials, but I certainly have a view to the entire clinical trial and approval process. And I think the perspective I'll be bringing to this meeting in particular is, what does it take to actually bring a new medicine to patients? And why does it take so long? So we'll expect some discussion about that part. Looking forward to it. Thanks, Adam.
Thank you, Jim. Our last panelist, finally, Renee Espinosa is the founder and CEO of MapVX, a company developing navigation technologies designed to help individuals with vision loss move through physical spaces more independently. Renee, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and the work you're doing, Tim?
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm the founder and the CEO of MapVX. We are the developers of an app called Lazuilo app that is available throughout the world. We have around 600,000 users with vision loss and blindness that use this app to navigate cities. So it provides audio feedback of your surroundings as you move. And we also work with different government entities and private entities to make their spaces more accessible, where we also map their spaces with our main platform that is called MapVX. That's a little bit about myself. I'm very humbled to be among these amazing people. So I'm happy to explain from my side how it's launching an application for people that has a disability and the feedback that the users provide and how that shapes the product.
So let's just jump right in here anyway. One of the most common causes of vision loss as people get older is called macular degeneration. It's when a part of the eye stops working as well as it used to, I guess. And that has to do, as you were mentioning, I think, with autophagy, Ana Maria. But here's the bigger question. Is it just an eye problem, or is it connected with other things that are actually happening in our aging bodies?
I will say that is all of the above, basically. So maybe I can start a bit with the kind of 10,000 view of aging, because even I know that the focus is in macular degeneration. We as at the field who works in biology of aging, a more global approach to aging. I mean, people sometimes think that we want to eliminate aging, and I always say the same. We don't want to do that. Aging should be the best time of your life. You don't have to worry about the school of the children. You have already a career that you have accomplished wherever you wanted. And the only thing that prevents it from enjoying this new best time in your life is the loss of function and the loss of health. So the whole idea of biology of aging studies is not to eliminate aging, but basically to change the way that we age to make sure that your health reach the same stage that your end life. Basically, we don't care about how many years more you can live through our studies, but how many years you can be healthy through these interventions of aging. And this is not a new concept, but it's something that was formulated in a much more structured way about 13 years ago with the creation of a new discipline that is called geroscience. And the basics of geroscience are very simple and everybody's gonna understand. So until now, we've been treating one disease at a time, right? You talk macular degeneration, you put a treatment. You have Alzheimer, you try for a treatment, even we don't have one. Cancer, diabetes, cardiovascular. And when you look across that spectrum, these are all diseases that the only common cause that they have, not the only cause, but the only common across all these diseases is that the highest risk factor is aging. So as you get old, these diseases appear. So that kind of make the whole field to formulate the idea that rather than treating one disease at a time, if we address aging and if we change the way that we age to keep functionality, to keep resistance against disease, that will in the future eliminate the need to treat these diseases. I know that in our society today, 2026, we still have many of those diseases, and that's why it makes sense to develop tools and develop compounds that can help the patients. But in the long run, the idea will be to intervene in aging in a way that you know, these diseases will appear so late that by then you will be already dead. So basically, they will not happen in our lifetime. So that's kind of the whole concept about why we do aging research. And macular degeneration is a perfect example, as Adam, you were mentioning, because aging is the highest probably risk factor. I mean, you mentioned genetics. There are some genetic risk factors, but this is not the major driver. I mean, a large part of our population who get affected are really past their 60s, right? So this is the aging component. And even I would love for everything to be about autophagy. I had to say that because that's the pathway that we study, it has become very clear for biology of aging that you don't age for a single cause, for a single factor. It's not that this particular thing change and that's why you age. There is a general agreement that there are about 14 factors, and we can talk about all of them as we go. There are 14 drivers, so hallmarks of aging that contribute to the aging process. Their influence in each of us might be different. You don't need to have the 14 wrong, or there are combinations, but it's important that they are being currently studied, validated as these drivers of aging. And as Adam mentioned, one of these drivers is this process of autophagy. So as a shorter answer to your question, Adam, yeah, I think the loss of autophagy that occurs with age contributes to macular degeneration, and we have studies on that respect. And we have studies that if you enhance autophagy, because that, decline with age. So if you enhance autophagy in macular degeneration experimentally in animal models or in eyes from donors, we can see an improvement. But again, it's not the only cause. It's just one of the factors that contribute, and it's treatable. It can be targeted.
Adam, could I jump in and add, another component? So, and this is obviously related to aging because everything is the immune side. So macular degeneration, glaucoma, and other diseases of the eye depending on what the trigger is, can often be made worse and get worse over time because of essentially an overreactive immune response, right? So an immune response that responds to try to correct something, but then never stops responding. And that kind of chronic inflammatory state can cause further damage and even lead to neurodegeneration in the later stages of glaucoma. So, it is also an aging related problem, but it can be addressed with some different approaches because if there's immune components are being addressed by some newer drugs, the so-called the VEGF inhibitors, address that particular component that can be part of both macular degeneration and glaucoma.
So is this something that's happening inside? Is the aging happening? Is it a cellular level? Is it all happening inside the cells that all around the body, or is it too general thing to say?
Yeah, so it's a combination, and actually, it's interesting because Jim brought up the immune system. So these 14 drivers of aging that everybody include, I will say that the immune system or alterations, as he mentioned, you have this chronic inflammation, something that start originally as a good thing, right? Is reacting to something that is going to try to repair, then it persists for longer. So for us, the immune system or the immunosenescence that is called, or the inability to control their immune response, is also part of the process of aging. It's something that it gets increased in aging because your regulatory Tregs cannot keep the others on check and many other factors. So it's all part of it. I mean, the immune system gets seriously affected by aging. But going on that line, it's not, and this is a perfect example that Jim brought up, that is like you are looking at the eye, but what is contributing to destroying your cells there is these immune cells that are circulating through all your body. So it's integrating, and the immune system is so important for aging, in part because it's kind of goes around the whole body. So it's kind of surveilling everything that happens around, and it integrates responses too. But yeah, what we have seen is that we don't age. Not all our organs age in the same rate, but all of them age. And the contribution of these different 14 drivers of aging might be different in every organ, but what you learn in one, you can many times apply to others. So in our case, for example, my group, we don't work we have some studies in macular degeneration and the eye, but we work a little inside. We work more in Alzheimer, Parkinson, more brain, but we use many times the eye as a window to the brain because most of what is happening inside can also be reflected in changes, at least for the aging part, not the disease, but the aging part. As Jim mentioned, you have neurodegeneration with aging. You have the same things that we are going to see in the brain. So I think there is this holistic idea that all the organs crosstalk and there is going to be intercommunication. So as your liver start not functioning so well, there is going to be affecting other parts of your body, and similar for brain, like from central to peripheral. So aging is not a single organ process, and it's quite coordinated.
Is macular degeneration genetic? Is it?
So I think, Jim might know more about macular degeneration than me, but I think the genetic component is more risk factors rather than single genes contributing to the disease. It's not like retinitis pigmentosa, like other diseases of the eye, that is clear mutations, different mutations, but in a very specific set of genes. Here, there are some genes that gave you predispositions and gene variants probably that gave you more predisposition, but it's not a straight classical genetics, right, Jim?
Yeah, you said it perfectly. Yes.
Thank you. That was very informative for me too, in looking at that whole thing. Actually, Ray, I want to bring you into this because you actually, work with people who are suffering. In your experience, the people who are already starting to lose their sight, the macular degeneration, one of the other things. What have you found is like the hardest thing for them to adjust to in everyday life?
Well, I feel like the different nonprofits that work with this community provide a lot of support because I think what I've seen for our users is that the loss of independence is actually very heavy for them. And so when one of the things that encouraged me to start this project was the when I like before starting my entrepreneurial journey, I worked with a nonprofit with physicians and doctors, and we were doing different applications for people that were having vision loss, low vision, and blindness. And kind of like one of the main factors that encouraged me to do Lazarillo was that one of the biggest challenges for them of loss of independence was actually being able to move along alone, right? To go out and go wherever you want by yourself, right? So one of the things that was very repeatable is that using public transportation, for example, I always need to ask for somebody else to help me out on when I need to drop off, the bus, and especially in Latin America, where you don't have buses that tells you which stop is, right, or throughout the world. That was quite a challenge because you will be dropped off in a place where you don't know where you are. Most people even remember by heart their trajectory, so that was quite scary and also very challenging psychologically. So that was one of the things that encouraged me to do this. And when we launched it, we, for example, the app tells you the stops, the street intersections, and guide you your way without you needing to input anything. So access to technology, we make it very simple, right? You as a blind person or with low vision, you can use many assistive technologies of your phone to use apps. But most of the apps are still not accessible. Even with AI now, most of the apps are still not accessible. That means that when they're using a screen reader, someone that is blind, they cannot hear the buttons to know what they do. So as simple as that, even though we're launching rockets and taking them back, some buttons are not labeled, and people cannot use those apps. And so, yeah, I feel like that helps, as more companies incorporate accessibility, helps also the person to feel more independent because they can now do more things independently.
Jim, we hear the phrase translational medicine, translational science in medicine. What does that actually mean? And can you explain it? We're hearing it for the first time.
Sure. Unfortunately, translational medicine can mean many things to different people, but I'll give you my interpretation and try to give you at least two different perspectives. And one is translation from the laboratory, from what Anna Maria might be doing in a lab with, first with cells and isolated proteins, for instance, and looking at what happens in an individual cell in a dish, into rodent studies, into mice. And making sure that what you think is going to happen based on your cellular studies actually means something and does something meaningful in a mouse. And then ultimately translating that up, through higher species into humans, and ultimately translating it into the open marketplace and a drug that works for, hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people, on a daily basis. So it's really getting an idea. Translation, in this sense, translational medicine is making sure that what you are doing in the basic research actually moves and has the impact that you want it to have or intend it to have ultimately in humans, right? And there's a long path that one has to take along that way. And there's many ways to measure whether you're being successful or whether you're likely to be successful in that translation. But that's the overall goal, is to move science from, in vitro, in cells or in test tubes, to working in people. Anna Maria, I invite you to give another interpretation of what that means, but that's what it means to me.
So you did actually a great job, because that has been, we get sometimes criticized that things are not translating from our labs to humans, but kind of preclinical is where I had to stop. I don't have the expertise or the training to really move it forward from that. I'm in the part of discovery. I can discover, and that's why, that's what I like, but that's also my training. I'm collaborating. So we have some small molecules that they were licensed to a company, and so I'm doing consulting, and I'm part of their team, giving advice for the scientific part. But I have gained such a level of respect for all of you working in industry, because it's a very different way of working. It's probably a very structured way to make sure that things are moving forward. It's like I always describe, and this it's gonna sound bad because we are not like that, but it's like, as scientists, we get driven by curiosity. It's like, what is the next thing? Oh, this is so cool, we have to follow. And that's why we are given freedom. And that's why I appreciate very much that we are given freedom, because sometimes discoveries can happen not for what you predicted, but completely like a side project. But if the world will move like that, you will never reach things till the end. So I think that's why it's a good combination, right? Like you do the discovery, you push it to animal models. And that's why once we prove that it works in vivo, don't have the knowledge, the resources, or the ability to really keep it through. So it should be, in theory, it sounds, by saying it this way, it should be like a match making heaven, right? Like a great partnership. But as many of us have here, there is this valley of death that is where all the basic scientist ideas and that they don't translate, because ultimately, I mean, we all started this. I'm a doctor, so at the end, I want to do biomedical research, something that impact population, right? And ends in a intervention. But then is the separation into these two worlds. We don't have the abilities that we require to translate. And sometimes I also understand from the industry part, might be frustrating to get so much noise because we are doing so many things at a single time. So I think this is important, and these kind of forums and discussions are important and are occurring. I think, I don't know Jean's feeling on that, but I think we are getting all closer as you have more academics that are kind of doing a spin-off, so trying to move into a little more of developing interventions. And then you also have a lot of, industry trying to understand a little more the basics and the mechanisms. So I think things are getting a little close. We still have a lot to do, but that's where each of us stops, right? Like I stop there, and then I need people like Jim to really move it forward to translation.
But if somebody, for example, Jim, if somebody actually got, diagnosed with macular degeneration, and, everybody says, oh, what about these clinical trials? Have you tried these new treatments? First of all, clinical trials, not just anybody can walk into a clinical trial, not just anybody can go for a new treatment. How is that process, and what should the people need to know if they were desperate enough to be experimental in that situation, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah, so to answer that question, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a moment to just lay out the process in broad terms, and I'm going to, because it's my own experience and expertise, I'm going to talk about pharmaceuticals, so drugs that are either, ingested by mouth or injected by sub-Q or IV administration, as opposed to technologies, right? And I'm going to let Renee talk about technologies. But typically, the process to go from Renee's discovery, that was working perfectly well in a really cool mouse model, to actually becoming a drug on the market that you can purchase at the CVS down the street is, typically takes, 10 plus years. And why? Well, first, there's proving that not only does it work in the rodent model, but it's safe, right? So before you can even go into the very first human clinical trial, you need to prove that it's likely to be safe in humans by proving that it's safe in multiple species, typically 2 different species, a rodent species and a higher order species. And that's before you get to the clinic. That'll typically take a year to a year and a half to get all of that done. And then there's typical path will be 3 different phases of human clinical trials: phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is all about safety, a very small number of patients. For most diseases, that study is done in normal, healthy volunteers, not in patients with the disease of interest. It's just making sure if we administer this to a normal, healthy volunteer, that it won't do harm. And there are typically these days some measurements to be able to detect whether it's doing what you want it to do. We call them biomarkers. So maybe some measurements from blood, just to be able to trace and say, yes, this is actually changing this pathway. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's not going to cure a disease because these patients don't have the disease, but at least you can tell it's doing what you want it to do. Then there's phase 2, which is and that's typically small trials, probably 30 people total. And then phase 2 is a larger number, a few hundred typically, and these are in patients. And now you're looking for finding the right dose that both has this continues to have safety and not cause any harm, but also having beneficial effects, right? It's actually moving the needle on the disease, improving the outcomes for the patients. At the end of the phase 2 trial, then you will move into a much larger phase, what we call phase 3 trial, which is typically thousands of patients. And by this time, you've honed in on exactly what the doses are. And most of the patients will be receiving the same dose, either on a per body weight basis or just a fixed dose. And that can take 4 to 5 years for most diseases to go through just that phase 3. So the overall process is usually more than 10 years. It's quite long and complex. So what does a patient need to know about, well, if I want to participate in one of these trials and get access to potentially new curative therapy, what do I need to know? You need to know that, phase 1 trial, probably not your best bet, because that's really about safety, not efficacy. Phase 2 and phase 3 trials would have the potential to actually offer a benefit to patients, because you are actually looking for positive outcomes with respect to the disease. The other thing you must know is that the patients that are eligible for participation in the clinical trials is pretty well controlled. So typically there's a set of ages ranges that are specified for a clinical trial. The state of disease, like what you've been treated with already that either has or hasn't worked, is often part of the requirements for eligibility to the study. And also, other what we call comorbidities, other diseases that you may, or other, challenges that you may also face that may potentially disqualify you for a clinical trial. So it's not as if every patient is going to be eligible to participate, but many are. And I strongly encourage, patients to ask their doctors whether they are a good, candidate to participate in a trial, because without those patients taking a chance and taking a risk, we will never learn the outcomes, and we can't bring new meds to the market. So it's a really important service to our overall society to actively participate in those if it makes sense for you. But that's a conversation with your doctor. And to determine whether you're eligible is whether you actually fit and whether you have the potential to benefit from that study or not. Let me give a concrete example to support that, and then we probably want to talk about how is this going to be sped up in the future. So Eliquis is probably a drug that many of our participants will know. It's a drug, blood thinner, essentially. It prevents clotting, and so it's a very widely used drug. I happen to have been part of the team, a very large team that brought that forward. It started phase 1, the first human clinical trial, in 2002. It wasn't approved until 2012. So that was 10 years in the clinical trial. It's a long process, a concrete example of a very long process.
So Renee, right now, if we're looking at the world today with because you talked about the apps that are out there to help screen readers, to help pass on people who can't see with their phones, but in reality, what is out there right now that actually are there helping? Would you have any idea what would actually be out there right now helping people with vision that's actually working besides your tool?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, with AI right now, you can use AI glasses, for example, and you have multiple providers where you can basically get a better description than a human can give you of whatever you want, right? Like, so as you move through a city or you encounter any obstacle, you can now use AI glasses to get, basically the information that you might need, and in your tone, personalized, at the tip of your finger for $300 AI glasses, right? Or even less. And I feel like one of the things that I was thinking when hearing Jim is like, wow, that's so many years, right? Like, I'm not used to that. Like, I'm used to think about it, like, especially now with AI of coding really, really fast. One of the things that entrepreneurs do, including me, is that we always try to find a way where we can support the end user and provide like a sort of assisted technology or an assistance where you're not in the limit of FDA approval, right? Like, so you're not giving. So, for example, I'm also supporting another project that is we're working for diabetes, like an AI agent for diabetes. Like, you cannot replace a doctor, but you can help them monitor better, get better stats, understand their way of eating and exercising, so that your glucose that doesn't get so much impact, and you can connect the dots from what you're eating to how your glucose is changing. But you cannot say, hey, this is medical advice, right? So you always need to have those considerations. And I feel like I'm just curious about how AI is going to speed up what Jim is doing, right? Because entrepreneurs we can come up with a lot of ideas and ways to do it, but you cannot. I think there's some threshold that you cannot go through where you cannot, I don't know, speed up clinical trials because you want to release this really fast. There's a limit. So in all the things with AI, and I feel you can just do what is like a sort of an assistant or an assistive technology where you're not curing the disease, you're not giving the full medical advice, but you're helping the user get to a better state of what they were without the technology, right? So you're not replacing the eye, you're giving a description of the space. You are not replacing a doctor, but you're showing that when you eat this, you might you always have a spike, so don't eat it.
If you're developing a technology that actually goes into the eye, for example, something that maybe replaces the lens or something like that, some sort of artificial eye in its own way, is that going to face the same type of regulatory challenges that the drug manufacturers face?
Well, I to be honest,
you can't test
I haven't done it, but I know that I have friends that they're doing some like hardware for medical devices, and you need to follow the FDA, the full approval. You need to, even with I forgot the name of the chip that you get into your brain, the Elon Musk company, right? Like that is following up clinical FDA approval, and is impacting at the beginning people with disabilities because it's a great use case.
But are they the same? Are they the same pathway? Are they held up to the same regulations? So because Jim was describing a phase with rodents. You can't obviously do the phase with rodents because that doesn't work. How are you going to do it with the rodents? You're going to stick it directly into a human, right? That's the only way to do it when you're talking a technology, I would think. Am I wrong?
Chimpanzees, right? Chimpanzees.
Yeah, you have many other models. It's not all about mice, right? Yeah, but apart from that, I feel like an MD, I should defend the FDA. Of course, we all complain about the FDA, and the first one having to follow all these regulations is like, why we have to do that? But the principle of everybody who is involved in biomedicine, the first principle is do not harm. It's more like, cure is okay. If you can cure somebody, that's great. But the most important thing that nothing that you do should harm a patient. So that's why these regulatory entities that we all hate so much are in place, because you cannot have people trained to test drugs or implanting things and replacing things and damaging population. So I think that it's in place for a reason. We just have to work with them because, for example, for us, they don't recognize aging as something that can go through a clinical trial. And we are working very hard on that. And I think Nirbharsila is making a lot of progress, and we can discuss about those things. So, it's frustrating sometimes, but there is a reason. But I think technology, and probably Jean can comment on that much more, about how it's accelerating drug discovery, AlphaFold, right? And then also how it's now, very recently, there is this whole idea of twin bodies. So there are already companies that are testing, because you cannot test it in humans, but you can, the AI has got at this level that you can integrate so much information and to create these replicas of a human heart with the same conditions and epigenetics and all these things that the patient, so you can test directly the drugs there, rather than going to the person. Of course, it's still in testing period. It's extremely expensive right now, but Renee can probably speak more of how cheap things can get once it's like there is competition and everybody is involved. But I think those will be ways that these 10 years, I think AlphaFold already has taken a lot of those initial screen years, but also having this alternative like organ in a chip and all this twin body thing is going to change the landscape. Or I'm very optimistic about this changing the landscape.
Oh,
I,
I'm
I
sure
guess
it is changing the landscape dramatically, and we're going to look at that at an example of that. Go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to interject on to your earlier question about, an interventional device. So a physical device that's going to be implanted. Think about a pacemaker or a stent for your heart, or a new lens, an artificial lens for the eye. Those are typically they are regulated by the FDA. They do go through a similar process, but typically not as long as for a pharmaceutical for some reason. Typically, those are only like between 3 and 7 years, so it can actually go a good bit faster, but it does still require, rigorous testing and a regulatory component, right? The FDA will look at all of your data and make sure that they agree with you that it's actually safe to test in humans. And most of them will involve some testing in animals, either dogs or non-human primates, for instance. Yeah.
Well, I think that 7 years in technology terms is a lifetime.
Okay, so it's very
So
different if it's just
so
software.
you
So it's
you so you
technology
have a
is technology is software. Yes, it's very, very different because it's not an interventional. It's not going into the body, right? So software based technologies can move much, much faster as opposed to
even
something that's
hardware tech
physically going to the.
even hardware technology, but again, another subject for another roundtable. But Renee, I mean, you must see that when you're doing this, that when you're the technology that you're using right now to help people navigate a city, you could actually, it could go wrong. Your technology could make a mistake, and it could walk a person right into a car or an ongoing, and you would not be. And I know this is an extreme example of it, but what the regulations don't really aren't really designed for that. Yet you do what, like a label reader, like a phone that reads the label of a medicine, gives the wrong prescription, and it actually does do a little harm. It's a little different in the way that it's looked at, even though the possibility of doing harm still exists. Don't you? Is that
Yeah.
a statement?
Yeah, and I feel like that's why you always need to be so as an entrepreneur, you sometimes wants to do more adventurous things, but you need to take precautions because the technology is not perfect. So one of the things that, for example, what you said, like what happens if someone like get hit by a car, right? Well, you need to put up disclaimers. This technology can make mistakes. This technology doesn't replace your senses, doesn't replace your cane, doesn't replace your guide dog. So you need to do it actually, and needs to be in your terms of service, right? And that's what we do actually. And even though sometimes we have some great crazy ideas that wow, this works really well for this use case, you cannot launch it just like that because it can create an accident in some cases, and so you need to take those precautions. So that, and I feel like it happens the same with hardware and all the stuff where you can, even with drugs, like we all see commercials like, oh, well, this drug can also give you XX, like Alzheimer and also other things. And there's a huge list because they need to say it so they don't get a lawsuit, right? Even though it can work very well for many people, right? And technology is the same, but as Jim said, like software is really, really fast right now. And so you can always, especially with AI, like it's crazy fast. So I hope that with hardware it gets faster, right? Like where these processes can be faster. I would love that. One of the things that in my future endeavors, I hope that I can do medical devices because it's actually my passion. That's why I get into space. But it was so difficult to get started. Like you need to raise millions of dollars. You need to, have a huge team, and the probabilities of failure are huge. Like, so,
I mean, it's like drug testing. I mean, and that's, I think AI, and we can move into AI now actually, because I think it's a good transition. I think that what you're saying is that it costs millions of dollars to do these things. Becoming a pharmaceutical company to develop a drug costs billions of dollars now. I mean, I would assume. So I mean, to run a trial. So the technology, I think, in the economics behind it is an interesting thought. But when we were preparing for this roundtable, we came across a study. And Sylvia, if you want to pull that up so that they can see what we're talking about, and it's where the AI system, it was called Robin, was so basically powerful that it went through all sorts of papers on macular degeneration and finding connections that the human scientists hadn't found already. And they were even to this point where they were going ahead and suggesting new ideas for treatments in this case, and this is the journal Nature that reported this, Robin discovered that there are two medicines that are already authorized, one in Japan and one in the United States, that can be used to slow down significantly the disease according to the AI models. And the one thing that this slide doesn't show you is that it changed 464 hours of work, what they estimated, into 4 hours of work. And the cost reduction was a similar thing. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking, okay, this is cool. AI is helping both paths at the same time, speeding up science and making tech schools and actually working with the tech of itself to make it smarter and cheaper. Because the way Robin worked is it would read it in, it would run the experiments, it would be just like an LLM. It would just keep refeeding itself until it became smarter to come up with this connection that was already supposedly out there. What, Anna Maria, what in your situation with AI, is it changing your research at all? Does it bring you new questions?
So it's changing my research, not in this way. There are already clinical trials going on this, so that's where it's getting the information. But yeah, it's changing. I mean, and a big difference. I don't think the question is whether we should use AI or not. We all have to use it. It's the only way to survive, and I think it's really enriching our programs and our research, and it does it in two different ways. There are many things that we do in research as part of the day-to-day life that are extremely routine. Analysis of data, analysis. So that automatize everything in a logical way. It's not just having a little thing like an Excel sheet, but automatize it is very important. So it has really saved us tons of hours. Then there are big discoveries like the one that got the Nobel Prize, like AlphaFold. It's like, we work in proteins, not the way that gene works, but for us it's fundamental to know also structures of proteins. And there are thousands of millions of proteins, and it was impossible to know the structure of all of them. Now, thanks to AI, basically you at least can predict the structure, can predict how things interact. So that has been, knowledge came through that. And then the other thing is for data analysis. And this is where I think we are going to get enriched more. We are used to analyze data, and we do a lot of image-based, right? Like we look at the cells and we look with these garbage containers that do autophagy locate, and we can measure size, number, and maybe intensity. Those are the parameters that as a human, you have tools that you measure. You gave it to AI, and then it can measure interconnectivity, distance from one to the other, shape, regularity, and integrate it as a single information. We don't think that way. So it's coming up with new patterns inside the cells or inside interventions that we have never seen. Sometimes you say, oh, this intervention is not doing anything. And then AI say, well, actually it's changing the position of this. So I think that's extremely humbling, but also enriching, because it's like, it's giving us this, I don't know if I can call it unbiased, but at least it's an ignorant way of looking at things completely without context. And I think that has a lot of value. Of course, we always try to validate it. I'm still, we want to have a human behind anything that is signed from my lab, but I think that has enriched a lot. And then, for example, the other thing, we are starting now with this like using computational methods to reproduce cellular processes, because I think through the years, we as a field had so much information that sometimes is not completely utilized just because we don't know how to make the more out of it. So now you can model part of the changes that happen in the cell, and then put perturbations, put some of this, how these compounds will affect this. So you can still, you might have to validate it, but you can model a lot of things that we couldn't do before. So I think those 4 things are at least things that we are doing in the lab almost every day now. And that I'm correcting my English, but that shouldn't count in this conversation.
Jim? Hey guys, yeah, obviously that study said that you could do the work of like clinical trials and stuff in 464 hours or whatever into 4. So what does that look like for the industry that you're in? what are there still big roadblocks that even AI can't really get past?
So let me either clarify or ask. That's doing the work of analyzing the results of other people's clinical trials that would have taken a human 4,000 hours and doing it in 4, as opposed to actually running new clinical trials, right? So, and that's going to get to what I've seen so far is absolutely agree with Anna Maria that all the things that she said about that AI are already having a great impact on. Totally agree with, including the data analysis, which I would include. In my understanding of what you just showed is it's a data analysis and prediction as opposed to substituting for a clinical trial, but maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me. Where and so in discovery, yes, absolutely, AI is speeding things up. One of the other things I kind of want to highlight is, you know, Anna Marie's already talked about AlphaFold and structure prediction, small molecule binding prediction. So predicting what small molecules will bind best to your target and have the effect that you want on that enzyme or that protein. But also then looking at liability. So predicting which molecules are likely to fail in that valley of death that Anna Maria referred to earlier. Many of the causes for why things fail there's many of them, but one is unforeseen toxicities due to binding to other things you didn't test yet. Rapid clearance, metabolism and clearance, that your body just breaks down the drug too fast for it to be effective. And there's many other reasons. And those types of liabilities, we now have a deep enough database to train AI engines to do a better job predicting which molecules are likely to fail by one of those mechanisms. And therefore, you can start a clinical trial more intelligently with a molecule that AI has helped us say, this stands a better chance of survival than these 10 other ones, right? So hopefully it improves our success rates in clinical trials. I haven't seen yet, and I don't understand yet how AI is going to speed up that long process that I described about going through human clinical trials. Anna Maria suggested one example of using organ in a dish. So replicating the human body, or at least organs, suborgans of the human body in a experimental model, physical experimental model. That is still a physical model, not an AI model, but you know, I think that will help also. But I'm curious to see, and just don't have an answer for you about how we're going to speed up the clinical trial process with AI.
I think and I fully agree, it will increase rate of success, right? Because at least if you have tested already the reaction in this artificial organ that came from, you know, human cells, at least you will know some compounds that they were going to fail once you put it. But I completely agree. You still have to do the clinical trial. No? There is no way around.
Maybe you can do
or
it
is there? I think that's a big question. Or is there, right? Is AI actually going to do something that's going to make us not need, you know, to test this in 3,000 humans before we approve it, right? So will that actually change?
Well, let's hope that it does something, because 10 years for technology and drugs development for people who have problems right now is disappointing, right? I mean, we need to that's if you want to if from I'm getting anything from this right this second, it's like we need to figure out a way to speed up that process so that people who are suffering now actually can take advantage of the technology. Like Renee, how do these AI discoveries, how do you think, do they help you turn, I mean, for you to create a tool that isn't a device that you actually put into it? I mean, AI is helping you develop new programs, it's helping you move on a faster rate, correct?
Correct. Like what used to take us a year, now we do it in 2 weeks. So I'm not kidding. There's some projects that we are launching soon. I fundraised to pay a PhD some engineers a few years ago before AI. They were not able to do it. And we did it in less than a month with AI. And that was because we use new algorithms to use basically cameras to estimate, for example, movement or where you are or things like that. And yeah, and that is crazy. You can use the last paper and use it in your advantage to, you know, push technology forward, adequate that, use that as a reference, and then like I don't know, like also test really fast. And so I think the speed of innovation in software is amazingly fast, and I hope that helps speed up this whole process of creating new drugs and new devices that I feel is doing right now, because Also opens up the options for, instead of raising maybe billions, now you can raise maybe millions and do something more crazy, like create a new medical device as an entrepreneur, where if, I don't know, like only the pharmaceuticals companies do it right now, great for them, but not great for the people, because now they set the price, so there's no much competition there. And I feel like it should be a lot of competition. So in the coming years, I'm really looking into it, like of how we can be more into the hardware development and use AI to do it, to speed up the process, allowing you to do that with way less money. So to make it possible actually for entry, yeah.
If you were to say anything to a patient, remember watching today, just one thing, one thing to ask or know or do as they're moving forward with approaching their aging process, what would it be?
What I can say, I mean, and this is something that has changed a little the landscape, is that before it was kind of, we gave up, right? Like you are old, you are going to get old, you are going to lose function. That's it. I mean, when I did geriatrics in Spain in the 80s, that was it. And I think for the point of view of biology, of like the field of aging and healthy longevity, I think there is enough now to convince us that there are many things that can be done to maintain health, at least till the last moment. So the idea, again, one side effect, you will live longer because you are maintaining your health. That's not the goal, how many years you live, but I think there are many lifestyle interventions. I mean, eventually there will be treatments, and they will be probably small molecules, there will be other things. But right now, I think there are many lifestyle interventions that I'm not going to go in detail, but that you can do to modify the way that you age. And I think it's very important that general population are getting aware, or at least that there are things that they can do and start being implemented. But it's the typical things that I always say. So 5 things, and I'm not going to repeat it. Any website will say the same. Yeah.
16 and 8.
No, so it's diet, but it's not so important how much you eat. Of course, you have to eat with moderation. If you have to choose a diet, Mediterranean diet, no question whatsoever. But the idea is to separate the meals. And again, nobody should do those things without talking with their physician, because you might have very low sugar in blood, and then you will have you will faint. But it's important to give some time to your body to activate your autophagy. And in that case, it's like by not eating. But I'm talking about, lunch to dinner. I'm not talking about crazy time, but that's very important to be aware, like the culture of snacking has made us age faster. The second one, something I shouldn't talk about, but is sleep. I just heard an amazing talk from an expert in sleep and very solid data about how important it is to restore every day. And it happens that autophagy also increase with is activated during sleep. The third one is exercise. You don't have to run a marathon, but our bodies were not made to be as sedentary as we are in our society. So some activity, social interactions that we don't value enough, but there are beautiful, beautiful studies showing at the cellular level how important to have not only animals, these are studies in people, social interactions. And we all saw it during the pandemic, and how fast some people age and how isolated they felt. And then the fifth one is always described as positive attitude, but it's really the way that you handle stress. It's like some people lose the bus and it's the end of the life. Some people lose the bus and sit down and say, okay, I will wait for the next one. So, you have to have some way to moderate the stress that we are all supporting, because there are many biochemical processes going from cortisol and many other things that when you are in continuous stress are aging you. So I think the conclusion is move to Spain. I think this is a very longevous country where you can live very
I can give a different approach.
I'll be there on Sunday, but that's another story.
Nice.
Jim?
Yeah. No, I love that idea of moving to Spain, actually. Yeah, I need my sangria right now. But no, I think I wanted to give I think our recommendations. Like right now, data is the new oil, right? And your data as a human, right? Like when I don't know, your doctor is recommending something, or you're getting a prescription, or you need to do a blood test, whatever, right? I feel like at least in my case, before I used to I don't know, don't save that. Like I would just have a paper and that's it. But now I feel it's critical to save the information of, all the blood tests you do, whatever, so that in the future or in the near future, you actually can check, like AI right now can even say like, hey, this is weird. Like, and we as humans, I sometimes I don't go to the doctor so often, right? Like, and this could also get me like to go to the doctor again and be more frequent and discover something. So I feel like if you do anything related to health, try to save that data in something that is safe, right? Of course. So then later on you can analyze it and continue. Yeah.
Data, the new oil. It's true. Jim?
Yeah, you asked for one thing, but I can't limit myself to one, so it's gonna be two. First, I want to just say that, so I painted probably what is a pretty dim picture of the long time it takes to get a drug to market. But the things are already changing, and I think the pandemic actually taught us a lot about how to speed up this process. So if you think about when the first COVID vaccines, how long it take to develop the first COVID vaccines and the first COVID treatments, drug treatments. It felt like forever at the time. I remember it acutely, but it was really fast in comparison to that 10-year time frame that I told you as an example for Eliquis, right? So we are learning, and the learnings from the emergency status and doing things faster because we had to is spilling over into other areas, into not just infectious diseases, but into other things. So I think overall, the clinical trial strategies and the speed at which the FDA is approaching the regulatory process is already changing and already improving, right? So this will get better. So that's one thought. And the second thought is I'm really excited about gene therapies. So I think, another technology completely, well, not totally unrelated to AI, because it is used actually to generate some of the hypotheses and also some of the drug sequences. But I think that gene therapy has a bright future, and particularly in aging, either to repair things that have gone wrong or to supplement things that have been downregulated. So part of, some things in our bodies where the genes have just turned off and they're no longer expressing a protein that's required for good full health, that we can then turn back on again and ramp up, or the other way around, turn something down. So I'm excited about the future of gene therapies, especially in aging.
I think that's very exciting too, and I think it's important to remind the people out there that what we said at the very beginning, that what happens to the eye is not isolated. It could be very much associated with everything else that's going on as your body ages. So all these behavioral advices that Anna Maria shared, and the keeping track of your own data because you're different than everybody else, and knowing about all these other therapies is important, because I think any type of care you can do to make your aging process better overall is going to help you prevent or at least slow down the process. At least that's what I hope, since we all have to age, and we might as well do it as well as we can. But anyway, so that's it for me right now. But we did get some questions from the audience for you guys. I hope you don't mind answering a couple. All right, Jim, this one's for you. How has AlphaFold changed research? Does he agree with Nobel Prize winner and AlphaFold creator Demis Hassabis that all disease might be cured in 10 years with the help of AI?
So second question first. No, not in 10 years. It will accelerate research, and I use AlphaFold very often. There are other competing AI models for protein structure prediction that I also use. So I don't want just have people limit their thinking to AlphaFold itself. David Baker also received a Nobel Prize recently for a different type of tool that also does a wonderful job at predicting protein structures and molecular interactions. So it is speeding up drug discovery by one, helping us understand, before we try to find an interventional drug, what is the structure of the target molecule that we're trying to intercept or enhance, either inhibit or enhance its activity. It's also speeding things up by just speeding up what we call in silico drug discovery or virtual screening, which is testing millions of small molecules for whether they're likely to bind to and have the effect that you want on that protein. We have been doing this with, non-AI, just traditional repetitive computational work. And then when machine learning kicked in, we were able to do it faster. And now AI is speeding that up even faster. So I think that the process of in silico drug discovery is being sped up dramatically. And AlphaFold is a part of that because it's providing the starting structures, on which you base that small molecule discovery work. So, I think it's helping immensely. But I would say that so far the impact is in that discovery phase, not so much in the development phase.
And we still have that bottleneck that you identified earlier about like how does AI actually replace human trials?
Yes, exactly. And that's what I
Yep.
say. How do we speed up development with AI is still, to me, I think a key question we need to figure out.
Okay, Renee, we got one for you too. What are some of the future capabilities that you see coming in the future for people with vision loss?
New capabilities.
Technologically, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, so of course, one might think about like how bionic eyes and stuff like that. But I feel like right now, one of the things is a lot of tools for work actually, like to be more productive at work, like so that you can use your computer, your phone really fast and automate and like actually not needing to see, to actually use a software that is a great part of life. That is, work, creating income, and for people with vision loss and blindness has been a struggle many years. That's why they do regulations. So I feel like that is something that is going to come a lot. I see a lot of startups working on that. And I feel like more hardware gadgets that are general for everyone are going to impact them a lot. Like AI glasses are now being used a lot. I have a lot of friends that are blind and they're just using AI glasses right now. And now what is coming is that more apps are going to integrate with them, like us, for example. We're integrating with hardware. So I feel like that's coming.
And the hardware is advancing. The AI glasses, I suppose, are getting better at being able to think. Are they ever going to be able to process an image? So macular degeneration takes out like
right now there.
Yeah. Are they going to be able to fill in that hole?
Well, there I've seen there's some, well, not so detailed, but I've seen that there have been some tests where they use a camera, it processes the image, and then you can see, if you're not able to see anything, but you can see now, like shades, and that's a huge difference from not seeing anything. So I feel like they need to enhance the hardware itself to do that better, but it's coming. I feel like that is going to happen. But I also know that it's not for every eye disease, because it's for specific ones. So I believe in the future, yes, of course. How long in the future? Maybe 10 years. Hopefully not.
Right? 10 years. So what about the bionic eye? You think that's 10 years away?
Bionic eye? So I feel like with all this process and verification, I feel like, yeah, it could be like 10 years, but hopefully less, right? I mean, depends on which, the first bionic eye, I feel that it's already been tested with humans. That is not high definition at all, but I feel it's going to be the same as how screens improve, right? Like first you see black and white, and with colors now a full 4K HD, right? I hope that's going to happen, yeah.
I really want to thank Ana Maria, Dr. Bryce, John, Jim, Renee. I want to thank you guys very much for being part of this inaugural roundtable. I learned a lot. I hope everybody out watching it did. And I'll let you know when it's up on YouTube. And anything else you guys want to say?
Oh, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.
You're welcome. And that for everybody else, thank you guys for attending. And have a great day. Thank you for joining us.